Hello, everyone. Welcome to our spiritual get together for April, which is the third spiritual get together for this year. We will just hold a short silence so that we are in tune with the hierarchies and the sage and the rishi can join us in our spiritual meeting for today. So thanks. Hello once again to everybody. Namaskar and welcome to our spiritual meeting for the month of April 2022. The topic that we have chosen for our spiritual meeting today is fate and freedom. So it's an interesting topic which was actually given by the sage. And just a brief overview, you see, when we come as a human being, we are bound by both. See, there is no what you call freedom from destiny as long as we are living. And on the other hand, if you look at it, there is actually freedom from our personal karma and destiny as well. Both, you see, fate and freedom walking hand in hand. So how do we actually assimilate the two together? See, look at one thing. All of you are familiar with your aura, that the source of what we call as our thoughts, the source of our feelings, and the source of our physical activity is basically our Lord nature. You see, thoughts constantly changing, coming from the mental body. And then we have got feelings, which are coming from the astral body. And then you have got this physical form due to which we are physically active. So astral body, the mental body, which is above it. So let's take it in the from top to bottom. Mental body is basically the source of thoughts. And then your astral body or the body of feelings is the body of your emotions, from where emotions flow into us. And then there is this physical form. Now look at one thing you see. There is one thing which is common in the three, that there is a constant change, right? How do we follow our destiny? The answer is very simple to that. You see, our thoughts and our feelings are the source due to which we follow the wheels of our destiny, right? It's actually very, very simple. So this lower nature of ours is basically what we call as fate, because it is predetermined by our personal karma. But then, you see, let us look at what is freedom, because as I said, that the two are working hand in hand. So if you look at what we call as freedom, you see, you look at your higher nature now. Now, as all of us are sitting, you see, one of the examples which we have touched upon previously as well is that, look, the view is in front of you, right? And this view which is appearing in front of us, I mean, it encompasses everything which is there in space and time, right? This view appears because of the activity of our higher nature, which is actually sort of included within what we call as the light of consciousness or the self. So our higher nature is what? Our higher nature consists of the body of spirit, right? Which is the atmic body, and the next body to it, which is the bodhic body or the body of intuition. So what happens is that the divine will, you see, from your body of spirit, that is basically what the body of spirit is made of. This divine will acts on the divine intuition of your bodhic body or the body of intuition, right? Which are outer lying. When you stretch your hands, first is the body of spirit, and then is the body of intuition. So this is how intuitively this view appears in front of us, right? This view that is appearing in front of us because of the activity of the light of consciousness, and look at it. You see, this view which appears is always free of the activity that we undertake, right? Look at this very carefully. So that is where that freedom actually comes in. Freedom belongs to our higher nature, and there is never any change in this activity of the view. Yes, the images that are appearing in the view are constantly changing, right? Our thoughts, our feelings, our physical activity, everything is changing. And what we do is we pick certain images in the view. You see, these images can be subtle or these images can be gross. By gross images, we mean whatever we see in front of us. And by subtle images, we mean the thoughts and the feelings that are appearing within us. So you see, the view that appears as a result of that light of consciousness, that is our higher nature, that is freedom, because it remains so uninterrupted by the activity of the lower nature. And then the fate belongs to the thoughts, feelings, and physical activity, because that is predetermined and follows a certain course. So this was the basis of what the sage had also actually explained to me to put forward of how the terminology and the correct understanding of what we call as fate and freedom has come forth. So we can take on questions and have a discussion on this later. But that was just my little input or introduction to today's spiritual discussion. So I'll request Rajeev ji now to take over, who is the main speaker for today's meeting. Rajeev ji.
Thank you, Anilji, for the fine backdrop and the fine introduction. I'll start with a couple of slides to develop further on the theme. Just requesting if you can see the slide there, please.
Yes. Yeah, we can. We can.
Because my apologies. The first slide is slightly limited from the top. My apologies. This was practically in line with what Anilji was sharing before, the different layers of our body. And the theme is again developed further in the second diagram. As Anilji has often explained, the different layers that we talk about, the Atmic body, the Baudic body, etc. And the concept of freedom and fate, as we were talking about. So I'll take the liberty of now going a step further from there. And I'll share a little photograph here, which is roughly about 65 years old from what I understand. I'm talking about a movie by the title Mughal-e-Azam. And I'll take some time to explain the concept as I see it. The movie was to become one of the milestones in the film industry, not only nationally, but internationally. And in particular, as I understand, the big credit goes to this little man on the left side. He was born 100 years ago, and almost at the same time, an author started writing a script for a drama, totally unrelated events. Some 24 years later, this man, who was to be known as K. Asif, took upon himself the massive task of making a movie by the title Mughal-e-Azam. This particular photograph is actually shared by the grandson of the gentleman on the left, Prithviraj Kapoor. The amount of effort, the amount of dedication, the amount of expense that was incurred is phenomenal. As per international standards, this was a movie on a huge scale. Luckily, it was successful. On the set, we can see the heroine of the movie and the hero, which is Dilip Kumar. I will share a few details as to how much effort has gone in. Basically, the way fate was helping K. Asif Saab and the challenges that he was facing all through. Just to give a bit of background, he did work on the first movie, at a very young age. The movie did not do very well, but his caliber as a director was well regarded and well accepted. So when he started work on this movie, he got a brilliant start, great help from different quarters, so fate was in his favor. As would the fate have it, within a couple of years, the movie ran into serious trouble. I will get to that detail a bit further as we proceed. I do want to share the next slide and possibly share a song as well. So let's look at the next slide as to the song that I'm keen to share first. This is a song which is still considered as one of the most popular songs of the last some 60 years. So let me see if I can share the song for a couple of seconds and then we'll come back to the slides. Can you see the slides again, please?
Yeah, now it's coming on the screen is yet correct now. You're cool.
Right. So just to give you the backdrop, the song that we are looking at, the wording is "Jab pyar kiya to darna kya." Basically, the gist is that when you are in love, what is there to be scared of? Now, a couple of points about the fate and the freedom that we are talking about. This was conceived by, again, the director Asif Saab. He wanted a song to this effect, to this theme. The music director Saab, which is Naushad Saab, and the songwriter, they took upon themselves that we will get through this song, we'll get the wording right, etc. So they sat one evening and they're going through the words one after the other. This is Naushad Saab, the famous music director, well acknowledged, well established, and very dedicated. He describes that we sat one evening about 6 o'clock and we went through something like 100 versions of the song. By the time we were comfortable with the wording, the theme, etc., it was 6 o'clock in the morning. We didn't have any food, nothing to drink. It was just the song that we were working on. The concept of fate is where they're just coming from an angle that we are free to exercise our very best, if you call it. The song is luckily still remembered, as I said, about 65 years on as well. It is considered to be one of the top 40 songs so far. Just to elaborate a bit further, as we can see the glass house in the background, the set was very costly and it was well beyond the budget of the movie. As I mentioned earlier, actually the movie ran into serious problems. It had to be practically stopped with 5 years production already through. Asif Saab had to search for literally another producer, and as the fate would allow him, he could find another producer and the production started again. At one cross section, Asif Saab is given a gift of 100,000, and I'm talking naturally 60 plus years back. That gift was for a festive occasion, and that amount is huge by any standards at that point. He insisted that with that money, please get me glass from Belgium, because he wanted this structure to be built. Freedom, as we call it, the glass was imported from Belgium, the construction was done, and the shooting starts. Again, the challenge from the fate. When they actually started shooting, they found the glass was reflecting the light badly. The shooting could not proceed. They called technical directors from Hollywood, UK, etc. They tried their best, but the conclusion was the glass is reflecting light. We cannot proceed with the shooting. Again, Asif Saab will not give up. He has to work from his freedom. he could somehow source another technical expert who saw an angle that from here we can possibly get the shooting done. So they did come up with a very creative solution that will have a very thin film of wax on the glass, and the whole glass house will be lit by the searchlight of some 500 trucks. Repeat, 500 trucks headlight to light up the glass house to give that feeling of grand palace. The song is well regarded, as said. The amount of money which was spent for the single song at that point was more than the budget of many movies. So that is one part of the picture that I can share in terms of freedom that a person can exercise to achieve certain excellence. I will take to the next slide if I can move on. The movie obviously costed a lot. At every cross section, Asif Saab is continuing with his mode of freedom and seeking excellence. At one point, they're looking for a particular song, and the conclusion was that for this particular song, we want so-and-so singer. Again, this is fully narrated by the music director, Naushad Saab. So they came to a conclusion that for so-and-so song, we should invite the famous classical singer of that time, Ustad Bade Ghulam Ali Khan Saab. They go to him and request him that, will you please sing this song for us? As the fate would have it, Bade Ghulam Ali Khan Saab is very popular at that point, and he refuses point blank. I don't sing for movies. And Asif Saab, in his own style, in his own freestyle, says, no, you will sing for us. And Bade Ghulam Ali Khan Saab, he's a master of his profession. He said, what's this going on? Naushad Saab, the music director, describes that somehow I could persuade him that, please, if you can be kind enough, at least consider the proposal. So just to sort of put him off, that is put off Asif Saab, he says, okay, I'll sing for you, but I'll charge you 25 grand. Now, just to give an idea, the 25 grand that he asked for was not double or triple. It was something like 50 times the going rate for the top singers. Asif Saab, the man who knew his caliber, his freedom, says it is done. And on the spot gives him an advance of 10 grand. I do want to mention that Asif Saab was spending money as though there is no tomorrow, but he was personally broke. He was living in a rented premises practically all his life. He used to borrow money from his friends for his cigarette. But the money that he's spending on this project is phenomenal. There have been multiple occasions when there was a rift with the producer because the budget was just way beyond the initial figures. But somehow the project clicks along. Just to share one more episode from the same movie, at one point there is a scene where the hero, which is Dilip Kumar, as we can see, hits the heroine, which is normal part of the drama. In this particular instance, Dilip Kumar, which is among the topmost heroes of that period, still regarded very highly by the industry. He was to become the tragedy king of the Indian film industry, very well regarded, thorough gentleman, etc. He actually hit the heroine physically on the sets. And everybody froze. What has happened? Asif Saab takes the heroine to the side and says, listen, your personal romance has fallen apart, but he still loves you deeply. That's why this deep reaction. Please forgive him. And luckily with that, the movie did continue. The songs were a great hit. The movie was luckily a great hit. People used to wait on the footpath for their turn to buy the ticket. Government of India had to issue 1-day visas. Repeat, 1-day visas. So many of the foreigners could come and see the movie. Still, I'll just go back to the first slide again. The person on the left, as I mentioned, is Prithvi Raj Kapoor Saab, one of the great actors of that era. This picture, incidentally, is shared by his grandson about 10 years back. To bring that intensity to the picture, Asif Saab selected Prithvi Raj because of his physical stature, his deep, sonorous voice, his mannerisms, and he did fit the role of Emperor Akbar like a T. Just to share one more episode from the same movie, at one point, the Emperor is to walk in scorching heat in hot sand. Prithviraj had some problem in his legs, in particular veins, and he was finding it very difficult. So just to give him moral support, Asif Saab said, I will walk right behind you. And if you look at the movie, you can see the agony, the pain, the desperation on the face of the respective actors, in this case, Prithviraj Saab. Likewise, at one point, the heroine, she's chained and she's singing. Now, it's quite normal for the picture side of things that it is all plastic chains and so on. In this case, Asif Saab was keen that the pain must be genuine. So poor heroine, she was not in the best of health at that point. She was in actual iron chains. And the song that she sang is still regarded by many of the singers today as a very genuine song of agony. So coming to the theme that we are talking about, freedom and fate, fate was challenging Asif Saab at every cross section. But somehow he had the inner conviction, the inner freedom that I can continue with the project. Many people thought he was a nutcase, but once the movie was successful, he was considered a genius. I will stop sharing for a few seconds and take any questions that needed. I thought it was a good case of freedom and fate. I will continue further a little later. Any questions at this point? Okay, friends, I will proceed further with this set of slides again. As Sage Ramana said, whatever is destined not to happen will not happen, try as you may. Whatever is destined to happen will happen. Do what you may to prevent it. This is certain. The best course, therefore, is to remain silent. I will now take the liberty of sharing a few of my personal experiences. I'm talking about one of the professors that I came across during my uni days. Obviously, the picture is not his. This is taken from the net, but it resembles his style. He used to smoke a cigar, so it practically resembles that. I was never his student. I was never in his class. But as I was leaving my uni, I did contact him for guidance about postgraduate studies, and he was specializing in industrial engineering. That's why I spoke to him. We got along well, and everything was fine. I did go on to join my master's at the respective institute, etc. As the fate would have it, he comes along to that institute as the director. It is a very prestigious position. Everything was fine. We were still exchanging notes. We were still meeting on the campus. Again, as the fate would have it, there was some industrial issues at the institute, which he did not find comfortable to handle. And within about a month and a half of his stay there, he decided to go back to the previous university. As a matter of respect, as a token of friendship, three of our students went to say goodbye to him. And at this point, this is the first time I found him very restless, agitated, upset. And this was not a pleasant setting. He left the institute, and one can say the relationship would have been over at that point. I continue at another station. I joined the work there. There's a conference taking place, and I knew he's going to be there. So I made it a point to go and meet him. And the moment I met him, he said, "Yeah, Rajeev, I knew you will come to see me here." And it was as though everything was normal, and everything was normal. So these events that we come across at times do challenge us, but they also give us the confidence and the basic freedom that we have. I'll take to another episode, a very significant turning point in my life. I have finished my HSC. I've got admission to a pretty decent uni, and we have booked the ticket. We are about to leave. The train is about to leave now. Just about 15-20 minutes before the train is to leave, one of the close family relations who was also there to bid us farewell, I'm going and my father is accompanying me. He said, Rajeev has got pretty decent score. He can get an admission in the local places as well, and they're pretty good also. And we knew that, but coming from him, it was a pretty decent signal. So on the spot, my father decided, let's cancel the trip and explore local options. Just 5 or 10 minutes before the train was to leave, we canceled the ticket. Of course, the search starts again. So next 2 days, we are moving around in Delhi, talking to different academic people, etc. And the conclusion was to go back to the original decision and take that offer, which was still luckily available. Now, in hindsight, the fate was directing me to go there. We did try to explore other options. This was not an easy choice. In hindsight, it was a very tough decision, but it was something which fate directed me. It was a very sharp learning curve, but a good learning experience on the whole. So once again, your freedom does kick in, and you do the best you can with the given circumstances. Proceeding along, this is another experience. Again, I do want to qualify, these pictures are not from the real organizations. These are borrowed from the net. I have been working with this educational provider for the last now almost 12 years. About 5-6 years back, we were at the Christmas party, and I was talking to the CEO, whom I have met a couple of occasions even earlier, and we do get along pretty well. So just one of those informal chats, I said, given that he's pretty good to talk to and he has got pretty rich experiences, would you like to talk to students directly? And he said, Rajeev, yes, why not? Now, young boys and girls naturally value this opportunity. So I took the step forward. I talked to my direct managers, etc., and the event was organized. Along the way, I could sense some ripples. Luckily, I could manage them. The briefing session was arranged, and luckily, it was very well received. In fact, it was sort of automatically repeated at different stations, different times. But gradually, I could see the ripples coming to my professional career. Yes, it is fate. In hindsight, I'm pretty comfortable that I was doing the right thing for the right cause. But then gradually you do get the sense that there is underlying freedom. You do have to take certain steps as the fate gives you the opportunity, and things gradually work out. If I was given the opportunity again, I'll probably do the same thing, because the opportunity that was offered to the students, I deeply value that. So I respect that. Taking a step further again from the academic viewpoint, I got an email from a student just as the exams were getting over, and the student wanted to speak to me. I normally try my best to offer that opportunity. And I did go to the campus, and this student was there. So we sat together for a couple of minutes. She was a bright student. All that she wanted to let me know was that she hadn't done her very best in the exam, which was just over. And she was in the first trimester of her pregnancy. She wasn't asking for any favors, any special consideration, nothing of that at all. It was a very simple sharing. No concessions asked for, no concession given. But to me, it was a very humbling experience, because as educators, while we are aware that students could be going through different circumstances, but this was a very fine learning curve for me, and I do value that. Taking a step further, again, a personal experience, the pictures are not of the real people, as I said before. This is about 12 years back. I'm on a trip to India, and I do take the opportunity to meet as many friends and relations as possible. So I have gone to meet one of my cousins, first cousins that is, and he said, Rajeev, would you be fine if I call my sister as well, elder sister, who happens to be in vicinity? And I said, by all means. So she comes in as well with her hubby, her children, and also at that point, her grandkid. So pretty simple family gathering. Everything is fine. Then very gently, she holds my hand and she's in tears. Now there's a whole lot of gist to it, that my father was the one who had sent this girl off in marriage. And these are all very fine points. And, you know, fate gives you these opportunities where the whole mutual acceptance is visible. I value that moment. Unfortunately, she has passed away now, but the moment holds a lot of meaning for me. Likewise, taking another step, this is again trip to India. I've gone to meet one of my known families, close families, and then we are going out for lunch. So it was just a brief trip that you normally took a rickshaw. So my uncle and aunt, as we normally address them, they are with me. So we had to hire 2 rickshaws. My aunt decided to sit in the rickshaw with me. Now, this is one of those delicate moments, which again to me is fate giving me a very fine signal. I will, of course, respect the privacy of the conversation, but it was as though the blessings of a generation have come there. It was a brief trip, as I said, but those few minutes are precious for me. The only thing I can sort of share here is that I took the liberty of spending time there. It is a very fine, gentle experience. Taking a step further, I've gone to cast my vote. This is going back about 7 years now. Just a normal process. You go to the station there. As I'm getting to the school where the election is taking place, a gentleman is parking his bike, and the bike shakes a little bit, and he just cracks a little joke in a very light way. So we have a laugh together. Just as the fate would have it, I am standing in the line to cast my vote, and he's standing right behind me. So a small conversation again. By the time we came out of the polling station, we both had enough to talk about, so we exchanged our phone numbers. And it was probably fate which was giving us the opportunity to meet each other. We have met many, many times over the last couple of years. Matter of chance that we have both worked in the same department. We are from the background of education. He has worked at the same offices that I have worked at. We can talk about the department, etc. The only element that I can highlight here is that there is a freedom somewhere of association, of accepting the fate. It is directing you in a certain way. He's a thorough gentleman, very high caliber. He has spent a lot of time and effort for students, etc. So I value that friendship. It was just fate getting us in that direction. Finally, friends, I'll share one more episode from a very popular movie. Again, this is mid-60s. The name of the movie is Guide, and I will share some of the details about a song. The song runs like Din dhal jaye, raat na jaye, tu to na aaye, teri yaad sataye, which basically means that the day passes by, the night does not. I can't get to meet you, but I'm always thinking about you. Now, the movie is luckily made by pretty high profile people. The music director, Barman Da, very well respected, very renowned film music director, etc. So they have already got a song which has already been fully prepared, etc. Somehow the team, I mean, we are looking at the hero here, which is Devan Ansar. They feel that this song is not hitting the mark. So with great difficulty, they convince the music director, and he also agrees that yes, this song is not hitting the mark. And they try to convince the songwriter that we should change it. And he refuses. So the next thing is that they decide that we do want to change the song. So let's approach another songwriter, a very well-known songwriter. His name was Shailendra. Extremely popular, very well regarded. So they approach Shailendra Saab. Now this is fate. Shailendra Saab has worked with these prominent people on many occasions, so there is nothing new, but he refuses to work with them for one simple reason, that you have taken me at the second place. And just to sort of discourage them, he asked for a very high price, which is very unlike Shailendra Saab. Now, these people have already decided that we want Shailendra Saab for this particular project. So they agree to his price. No, as I said earlier, this is very unlike Shailendra Saab to ask for a higher price. Now, this is fate bringing people again together. He retains the original line of the song, but changes the whole song. In the last 60 years, this song is still listed among the top 40 songs. Rafi Saab, the famous Indian singer who had already sung the song, was naturally going to sing the song again, the revised version, and he did. Now, he was offered the amount once again for singing. And being a thorough gentleman that he was, he said, I'm not going to charge a second time. Not only that he did not charge a second time, there is a small little sentence therein. It says, Dil ko kaun samjhaye, which means, who is going to convince me? Very often, Sage Ramna has also highlighted, who am I? And this is pointing to that direction. Rafi Saab has spent a lot of time singing the same song again and again. From what I understand, he sang the song 27 times to get that expression right. I will take the opportunity to share the song. Hopefully, we can get to the song and I can conclude my humble presentation with that. So let's see if I can get the song as well.
रात न जाए तू तो न आए तेरी याद सताए.
Thank you, friends. That brings my humble presentation to a conclusion. I'll hand over to Anilji and Vijayji. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, Rajeev ji, quite a beautiful presentation. Thank you. Vijay ji, would you like to now?
Thank you, everyone. We'll start with 3 ohms. Om. 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 सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै. ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. So today's topic, which is titled Fate and Freedom, very, very interesting topic, which is probably can be worded in various ways. Fate, is one word and freedom is another word. We just sort of look at it as two separate words and then see how they are related to each other from the perspective of an individual wanting to uh, find out what his or her true nature is to attain that elusive so-called happiness that everyone wants to achieve, because everyone, uh, as it were, are always but always looking for and trying to achieve happiness and nothing else. So when we look at fate, fate is something that is termed as what one uh, sees or is faced with in life at any given point in time. In from a word that is used in India, it's called karma, and karma has become very popular now all over the world as the karmic consequences, the karma. So the fate that is there is something that one receives, prarabdha karma, which is the fate that one receives in a particular circumstance and is faced with that to deal with at that particular given point in time. When that particular karma is presented to that person has no choice but to receive it, because he or she has not asked for it at that particular point in time. But as per the karmic law, that has been received at that point in time because of the action that was done prior, and it is now come forth as a cause and an effect. So the cause was some time ago and the effect is now. The cause and effect. That's how the functionality of the world happens. So the prarabdha karma is, so there is something called sanchita karma, prarabdha karma, and agami karma, etc., etc. We won't go into the details of that because very, very briefly, the agami karma is something that accumulates when an action is done, which causes certain uh, waves in on the ocean of consciousness, and that is goes into a cauldron which is called the sanchita karma, and that sanchita karma then out of the cauldron is removed a bit of the karma which presents itself in that particular circumstance to a human being as prarabdha karma. So fate is something that is unavoidable as long as there is body consciousness. It's been very, very clearly stated by sage Ramana Maharshi that both fate and freedom are applicable to only those who have body consciousness as an identification with the body and the mind. So but fate can be changed in a slightly different way because that's what they call as destiny, fate or destiny that is there can be changed because as discussed I think previously we have actually discussed this in the past where they say they've said and sages and saints have said this in the past. Every time you sow a thought, you reap an action. And this is very clear. We can see it in our day-to-day action. Every time we sow a thought, we reap an action. Every time we sow an action, we reap a tendency. Every time we sow a tendency, we reap a habit. Every time a habit is sown, we sow a habit, we reap a character. Every time we sow a character, we reap our so-called, as it were, destiny. So when we look at it from the perspective of destiny, it is basically, therefore, destiny is our own creation. So you are the architect of your own fate, as it were, and a master of your own destiny. So when we say that fate is unavoidable, when we say fate is unavoidable, it is at that particular point in time when it is being received, one doesn't have a choice to receive that particular circumstance which presents itself. But if the action that is performed as a consequence of that circumstance is done with no identification to that action, without being swayed by the good and the bad of that action, and without getting affected by it, the consequence of that action can lead on to something that one can choose one's destiny, and then the circumstances that come about in the future, as it were. And mind you, the word future is only based on when we are talking about it in the circumstance, in the gamut of body identification. When that happens, then fate can be changed. You are the master of your own destiny. So, given these circumstances, one can see how fate and freedom are interrelated when there is body consciousness and when there is identification with the body. Freedom is basically the free will. The free will is the will to be free from the binding, the identification with body consciousness. That is what is there. That is the freedom we have completely to do what we can to achieve that. So these are things that are practical pointers which can be utilized in our day-to-day actions to relieve ourselves of body consciousness and identification with what we consider as I, me, and myself. If that is used practically, slowly and slowly, the the effects of karma and the effects of so-called bad and good slowly and slowly wean off. And when that happens, circumstances also change to suit the change in the outlook and the actions. And one finds that even one may have found previously the kind of friendships that one had, the kind of people one used to meet, the people one used to deal with in the past are different to what one actually have now when the interests have changed. You you tend the tendencies for this, as they call it, the universe to correlate itself and rationalize the whole system to try and ensure that you tend to gravitate towards those who are like-minded. It happens automatically. You don't do it, it happens. And that's due to the so-called fate, but that is actually due to the consequence of the actions, the effect of the action that actually was done at that point in time. When one looks at it from that perspective, there is a great amount of hope that is offered to the devotee, the aspirant, because one can grow on the spiritual path to try and reach one's true nature, find out what all this is all about. But fate and freedom are not what is the be all and end all of life, because one's true nature, the light of pure consciousness, is beyond fate and beyond freedom. On the spectrum, on the substratum of pure awareness, consciousness, are these systems, these things that play around on the screen of life. And the play goes on, the cosmic play goes on. When that realization, when that clarity of vision dawns, there is freedom, or whatever you call it, because then one is free of fate and one is goes beyond freedom as well, because freedom is your true nature as part of the cosmic plan. So rather than being very uh, dejected, or one goes into a state of elation when there is good things happening, and when there is little bad happening, one goes into dejection. Rather than doing that, one can actually uh, use these techniques to try and go beyond all these things. go beyond what we term as, the swing of the pendulum, as it were. And if that is done on a regular basis, but with a keen, wanting, intense wanting. And Ramana Maharshi has said on many occasions there are two paths, and you can read it everywhere. There are two paths, two simple paths. One is the path of inquiry, path of trying to find out who is this, who is actually going through this fate or freedom, wanting freedom. Who is it who's trying to find it? When one goes to try and go to the source of where fate and where freedom came from, the source, one goes beyond all this fate and freedom. The other option is to surrender, have complete faith. Start off with complete faith. But even that faith, as it were, when you say faith, it's a loose terminology in the English language, because there is no equivalent for the word Shraddha. Shraddha is loosely termed as faith, but Shraddha is something much more than just faith. There is a small story about this person who's, and it has been related in the past, where he's a minister to this king in a kingdom, and the king wants to uh, eat. Somebody donates a big apple to him, very nice, beautiful apple from his orchard. And so he says, "Oh, I'm going to cut it myself. This one, it looks so enriching and beautiful. So can you please get me the royal knife?" So he gets the royal knife and he starts cutting the apple. And as he's cutting the apple, for some reason, he cuts his finger, and the king cuts his finger, and it starts bleeding. So he he actually wraps it up. People come to him. The doctor comes to him, the royal doctor, and ties a band-aid and whatever in those days, and gets him to be okay. That episode over, the next day he wants to go hunting. So he tells his minister, "I'm going hunting. You want to come with me? Come along." So they go hunting. They go ride their horses and go hunting. As they go along, so before that, one step backwards, he asks, and they've been discussing about faith, faith, not FATE, but FAITH, faith, in God, and in the supreme, as everything happens for the best. So he asks the minister, "You give me the reason why this is, my finger has been cut. What's so good about this? Why what's everything happens for the good. What's good about my finger being sliced off?" So the minister just says, "It all happens for the good." So anyway, they go out on their ride, goes through the jungles to try and do whatever they were meant to be doing, and they come across this this well, and the king is very perturbed by his answers every time the minister's answers, saying, all happens for the best, all happens for the best. Uh, so he takes him to the edge of the well, and he says, "Look down into the well." And the minister looks down into the well, and he just throws him into the well. And the poor minister is there lying inside the well and unable to come out, because the king won't let him out, because the king says, "Well, it all happens for the best, so you can be there and let's see what happens. Why is it the best?" And the king continues. He wants to head towards his kingdom, but for some reason he loses his path, and he goes into a herd of these tribals who are living in the deep part of the jungle, and they get hold of him, the king, and he says, "I'm the king. You can't sort of take me, and I'll get my army." Saying, "Y'all are, they don't understand what he's talking about. They just take him, and they want to put him on the stake, and do that ceremony and do all that kind of thing and kill him." Uh, so they take him and they put him on the pyre, or whatever they call it, the stake, and as they are about to kill this king and use him as a sacrifice. So that's more as a sacrifice. And for the sacrifice, you have to ensure that that person whom they are putting on the stake is absolutely clear of any uh, hurt or dent or anything. He has to be pure, as they what they call it. But they find that his finger is cut and it's bleeding, from his hand. They say, "Oh, this person is not a good candidate because he is bleeding on his finger. We can't put him as a sacrificial goat, as it were, or human. So he has to be let off." So they get him off the stake and tell him, get on your way, and the king is let free. So the king, he says, "Oh God, thank God, I'm safe now," and he goes back. So he said, "Now at least now let's see what happens to the. Let me go back and find out what's the condition of this poor minister of mine. He must be feeling really bad that I've put him in the well for so long." So he goes back to the well, picks him up, takes him out of the well, and uh, and as they are going back to the kingdom, he relates this entire story of what happened to him. And the minister says, "See, everything happens for the best. It's meant to be done. Whatever is meant to happen is happens for the best. And there you are. You cut your finger. That's why they let you go. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been alive now at the moment. They let you free." So the king said, "Okay. I mean, that's a good idea. But you tell me, what was good about me throwing you in the well? What was so good about it?" He's saying, "Dear king, if I was with you and if you had not thrown me in, instead of you, they would have used me on the stake. So everything happens for the best." So the other side of inquiry is faith, and used faith as the medium to surrender oneself, surrender one's ego at to the supreme. You can call it anything. You get the feet of the Lord, you can call it. You can call it to that absolute pure consciousness, to that supreme reality. Whether you want to follow the manifested path or the unmanifested path doesn't really matter. The idea is to ensure that the ego, the identification with the body mind, goes down. Whatever method one may use really doesn't matter. All religions are meant to be pathways towards that. Then they get into other things. So rather than that, let's use a terminology that is free of all this, because it's more of spiritual path, trying to find out our true nature. So the inquiry into the path, which is Bhagwan Raman Maharshi's path, where he advocates that the best path is to actually inquire and find out who is this who is actually talking about fate, who is talking about freedom. Actions are happening, fine, that's okay. But when that inquiry takes place, there is a slow relieving. One gets relieved from these entrenched ideas and conditionings that the mind has focused on right from birth. And when that freedom and that relieving takes place of all these conditionings, freedom automatically is a byproduct, because that is one's own true nature. It only gets revealed. You don't attain anything. There's no attainment. There's only freedom. Even now. So when on the platform of this uh, discussion, let us take one step back, and then go into that meditative understanding of yearning and wanting that, to find out what my true nature is, one's true nature is. Let us just meditate for just a couple of minutes. before we conclude with the universal prayer. And then after that, we can discuss or ask any questions. So let's all sit down in whatever position we are in. Lightly close our eyes, back erect, the lower back, upper back, spinal cord, neck, and head in one straight line, vertical line, relaxed, completely relaxed. Mind, thoughts, let them play, let them do whatever is meant to be done. There is no identification with anything because my true nature is freedom. Fate, fate cannot bind me. Freedom is my true nature. Destiny is only a consequence of identification with the body, with the mind, with the intellect. There is complete upliftment into the realms of purity as all conditionings and all fetters drop away. There is only that pure, absolute, unaligned, true happiness, pure awareness, absolute consciousness. Om. Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnaat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and prostrations unto thee. Thou art omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Thou art Satchidananda. Thou art the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to resist temptations and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, greed, hatred, anger, and jealousy. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold Thee in all these names and forms. Let us serve Thee in all these names and forms. Let us ever remember Thee. Let us ever sing Thy glories. Let Thy name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in Thee forever and ever. Let us abide in Thee forever and ever. Om. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Anilji, please.
Yes, yes, Vijay. So we'll just take any questions if anyone wants to come into the discussion. Yes, John?
I was wondering a question to Vijay. I have certain views of spiritual beings working around us. Like if we talk about Ramana and the Rishi, they're somewhere, but also there are higher beings which make karma, which work through us and in us. What's your view of this?
So uh, it's all part of the grand plan for one to revert back and find one's true nature, uh, John, because everything that one sees and one uh, experiences, whether it be on the body plane or the mental plane or the astral plane, it's all within the relationship with the body and the mind and the intellect. So everything is within the framework of that. So they are actually inducing all these spiritual beings that come as guides or provide input are there to induct you and make you go and progress you on the path, but it is still within the framework of the body mind intellect, whether it be on the astral plane or mental plane or beyond. But when that is transcended and one realizes one's true nature as free from any of these, whether it be conditioning of the mind and intellect on normal day-to-day work related stuff, or whether it be messages that are being relayed from spiritual beings, they are all within the framework of the mind and the astral plane or whatever the planes are, those several planes. When one goes beyond that, then one is free of these things. One, even if that those things come, one knows that it is not me who is experiencing all this. The idea is the doership vanishes, where it says, now it is, I say, oh, I am John, I am experiencing it. John says, I am being, uh, I am receiving these messages from these spiritual beings. Who is that I? Is that John? When that when that freedom, the clarity of vision really truly clears away all such doubts, then spiritual beings, even when they come and they give messages, then there is no doership. It's not to me as John,
Hmm.
because there is no John. John, of course, John is there as a person, as a human being is there, but there is no attachment, there's no identification. So all that happens is a very simplistic, very, very simplistic thing, John, that the identification drops away, period. Everything else is within the framework and the gamut of mind, thought, body. The moment the detachment and the identification disidentification happens, then that's freedom. But it may still continue. The relaying of messages, the whatever has to happen, it continues on the framework of the screen, which is your true nature. Because you are the screen. You are not this John that is experiencing these things. So when that freedom happens, that it may still happen, but you know that it's not happening to me per se.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, because next time I'm talking about evolution,
Yes,
and it's a sort of a causal sort of thing of knowing our present, the past, and the future.
yes.
And what do you see of the future at this stage? Is it important? Is it, because at the moment, I mean, I'll give you there's a lot of fear and anxiety that has come into the world. We can talk that as fate. Yes. through COVID, through isolation, mental problems. We've got the Ukraine war, which has taken a world stage for some reason, because it's other wars haven't taken such a world stage. But a lot of people are concerned, and the economies are sort of, teetering.
So, sorry.
Yeah, no, keep going.
So the point being that it's a very simple thing. Don't worry until worry worries you. And even when worry worries you, it is only worrying something that is in the future. It's going to happen in the future. So whatever is going to happen in the future is not in one's control.
No,
If there is a future.
No, I
So
agree.
what's the point in worrying? That's number one.
Yes.
Number two is what has happened in the past is dead and gone, right? So what can be done right now? As
That's
we
right.
discussed, when you talk about fate and a circumstance presents itself to that person at that point in time,
Yes.
the action. Sorry.
What I was really referring to is achieving this state, but then we have suffering outside of us.
One, as Raman Maharshi has said in the, when people have asked this question, he has said very clearly that you don't worry about these things. Now it will obviously come to you as a big problem because one is identifying with the body. When the identification drops away, find out whether this problem exists or doesn't exist. This entire huge issue about all these various things about what is happening in the world, as it were, is happening, and one is worried about these things. When that source is found out from where these things are arising, these problems will not be solved. The problems will not be there.
Yeah. Well, what I was really getting at, sure, I don't have to be worried as John Pater or even self within John Pater.
Correct.
But then again, we talked about fate. Now, fate, you said karma. We can talk about world karma.
Yes.
It affects the whole world.
Yes.
And the question is that we, in our state, is it our responsibility, even though we are not affected,
Yes.
but also seeing that we can help our fellow man through compassion, through whatever we can do?
Yes, for sure.
And that's a free act. In other words, we don't have to do it because we're no longer impelled by it.
Yes.
And
So what? Yes, it is very, very true. You can do it, and that is, it's if one is impelled to do it and one is compelled to do it, one will do it, whether one likes it or not.
yeah, but one can say, I see that it needs to be done. I don't have to do it, but I'm going to do it because it's the right thing to do.
Correct. Yes.
So one
But
can
that's
do it.
because one can do it and because one is driven towards that cause.
Yes,
And
yes.
there are many others whose conditioning, whose past conditionings are such that they are not compelled to or impelled or driven towards that. They'll say it's not my problem. I'm not going to do it. I don't really care. So that's it all depends on the conditioning of that particular person. And would you like to take that phone or sorry? So
Yeah, okay. All right. Anyone else? Any question? So, is anyone has got any query related to today's topic? Okay, I think.
yeah,
Yes,
John,
yes.
if you would like to discuss further, we can take it offline and you can give me a
Okay.
we can chat. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Okay. All right, John. It's all good. Should we bring it to an end?
I'm fine. I'm fine.
Okay. All right. Look, thank you everyone for having joined yeah, and for having given your valuable time to the satsang and the spiritual discussion. And we'll meet again in the second Sunday of next month, May. And John will be, giving the talk on evolution and self-absorption or whatever the title is. So thank you once again for your time, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you.